Hello, everyone. Welcome to the first Chichester Chat of the new year. I am Phil. Of course, Lilith is here. And of course, the man himself, the name,
Ooh,
Mr. DD
ooh.
Chichester.
Hello, guys. I'm looking younger than ever for 23, I'm sure. So nice to be here. Nice to see you both. Nice to see you smiling. Happy New Year to everybody. It's very, very good to be back.
Yes, Lilith is smiling now. She wasn't smiling the last week of December when she was supposed to come up here, and Southwest had other plans.
Yeah,
Oh
I have
my
several
God.
ties with Southwest,
Were you
unfortunately. I'm a Delta
trapped in
girl
that?
now.
Were
Well,
you
I was at
trapped in that
home trying
debacle?
to get
No.
to see Phil, so I felt
Yeah.
bad for everybody that was like trapped in Tampa. Like,
I was going to say you didn't get to the airport and get
yeah, I got to
like,
the airport and I waited literally probably 12 hours. So
Yeah,
I
but
really
at
was
least
oh
at least
my
she was in her
God.
hometown, so she could just turn around and
go
go
home.
home
Yeah.
when they told her.
I mean,
Right.
there were no hotels, there were no rental. I felt so bad when I left, and I saw like literally it was like a mile and a half line long through like the airport for the people like trying to get their tickets, and they
Oh.
couldn't do it. They literally didn't have flights out until like the second of the new year. So
Insane, absolutely insane. Yeah, apparently they
high
took all
speed
that
rail. Sign
that
the petition.
yeah, I guess they took all that
And
sweet
then the train had an
pandemic
issue
money.
too.
Oh,
So
really?
you didn't hear about there were like people trapped on
Oh, on the
a train
Amtrak,
for
I heard about
yeah
that. Yeah,
for
like
39
30.
hours.
Yeah, like they stopped it in the middle of nowhere and wouldn't let them off, and it was like,
Yep.
can't believe there wasn't a
They kept
rebellion.
saying you're not being held hostage. I'm like, sweetie, if you have to tell somebody, I think you're being held
Yeah,
hostage.
exactly. No, really. Here, put the lotion on the skin. No, it's
Oh,
it's
So
yeah,
yeah.
that's bad scene.
I wanted to become a spice merchant and react my revenge.
The clever person, if that had been reported in real time, would have like driven their food truck out there, and just driven it up and down, outside the window to, you know, entice people to come out and get a burger or something.
oh yeah, I always say there's stuff like that. People with food trucks, they should just go with the people's places of business. If they don't have a cafeteria or anything,
Oh
just
yeah,
walk their
yeah.
own. Yeah.
But trapped Amtrak train, like capitalize on that.
Oh, these
Oh
days, yeah,
yeah.
they sit out there or outside of an airport. Yeah.
Right, right.
All right. So, did you have a good holiday, sir?
Yes, thank you. Yes, yeah, it was pretty chill. One weird relative ambush, but we sort of routed around it, so that was good. And Santa brought us everything we wanted. For not that we wanted much, and it's been pretty cool. So enjoyed it a lot. Went to see a concert on New Year's Eve, which I'd never done before, so that was a nice different way to spend it. And although the sound mix was totally off, so you couldn't really.
It's like watching Netflix at this point.
Yeah, sort of. Yeah, but we had a good time, and the music was good, even if you couldn't understand what was being said along with it. So just a nice way to sort of start things in a different way.
All right. So today we are talking What If Volume 2, number 73.
Hooray!
The title alters from the cover to the
It does.
page.
It does. How weird, right? Yeah.
Yes. So it could be what if the Kingpin owned Daredevil? What if the Kingpin adopted Daredevil? So
I could
they,
not
they
tell you.
realize they're like owned is a bit harsh. Let's pull that back.
Well, I don't know why, but no, they had to make a conscious choice about that because I would never have. That's like when they would, put baloney in, for a curse word or something. I know from what I can remember, which isn't always a lot, but I know the story was, what if the Kingpin adopted Daredevil? That's what the story was. That's what it's about. That's why would I title it anything else? And so I was as surprised as anybody when the book showed up in my promo pack, or I got my creator copies, and it was what if Kingpin owned Daredevil, which also has obviously a horribly different um meaning at any point in time, but then it's not like they changed it on the inside. I could have got it sort of if for some reason. I don't know why anyone would think adopt it was a bad term, but change it on the cover and then change it on the inside and then make the writer, twice as confused or angry. But whatever, somebody in between maybe somebody who was setting the cover copy had been adopted and had a bad experience, and they I can't do it. I
It's
can't
just
put
one
the
of those
type down.
things you'll never know. I'm so sorry.
I will never know. I will never, and nobody, I couldn't even remember who would have done that, even if I was to get in touch with the editor. At this point, I'm sure he wouldn't recall. So it's one of those things lost to time.
Or is it just, I don't know, did they think there was going to be some like negative connotations where, not even negative, but just like people might be turned off to say, oh, if it's adopted, it's going to be like kid Matt Murdock, Matt Murdock as a child. We're not going to get like him as Daredevil at any point, even though he's on the cover. But
Even though he's on the cover, I don't know. I don't know. It's hard to parse these things. Again, it's somebody say, oh, that's offensive, or that's going to raise an issue. It's impossible to know, because on the rack right next to it, there would have been somebody from the Hellfire Club and a G-string, and 2 issues down, Carnage holding up a small child's limp, eviscerated skin. So but owned and adopted had to be
as a 90s kid, I read it as pwned. So
pwned. There you go. Then maybe that was it. Now that would have been that would have been a good title. That would have been the good updated version of it.
You and your mortal enemy, Carnage.
Yeah, exactly. Sir Carnage was like, man, I never got Carnage, but I didn't even get the Carnage movie. I finally watched it. It was like, oh, okay, what? And I love Woody Harrelson, and obviously I hope he got a nice big check for it. I'm sure he did, and on from there.
At least they didn't try to drag it out. That thing was almost exactly 2 hours. They knew what they had. They're just like, yeah,
you're right.
Going for a Venom movie, they just want to see Venom and Carnage punching each other.
Yeah. I guess Tom Hardy got out whatever crazy lunacy he wanted to do on screen, and time up. Stop rolling cameras. We're done. He's crawled into enough lobster tanks or whatever he does.
So, did you pitch this idea, or did they come to you? Because I never know how what ifs work, honestly.
Yeah, it's weird, Lilith. I figured that would be one of your guys' questions, and I've been racking my brain trying to figure it out. Where the genesis of it was. As a one shot, and I was certainly busy at that point. It wasn't like I was scrambling for work, as I might have been later on, and sort of, knocking at everybody's door saying, what do you got? I think I was still relatively, busy on a couple of fronts. Not that I wouldn't want to pick up additional work, but additional work would have been, a mini series or, a limited series, that type of thing to kind of add to it. So what if typically was, somebody would pitch a story, or maybe the editor would ask you to do a story, but they were a little bit more treated as inventory stories. They could come at any time, right? That didn't have to be issue 73. That could have been issue 78. It could have been issue 82. They were interchangeable in terms of that sort of thing. So so I can't imagine I went to pitch it per se, in the sense of oh, I've got this idea and we're not going to run it in the regular book. I sort of more wonder if it was just the editor kind of came to me and said, hey, we need a Daredevil story for, we haven't done a Daredevil story in What If, Daredevil, is there an idea for something? And that would have been, in my mind, probably more the genesis of it. And then from there, kind of coming up with the idea. The idea feels very much like one of my ideas, and something that I would have stacked the cards in that way, as opposed to somebody coming to me and saying, hey, we want to do a story where the Kingpin owns or adopts Daredevil. Can you do something like that? So I feel like I would have went back and had come up with that idea, just because at that point I felt I knew the dynamic of Fisk and Murdock, and this would have been something that really hadn't been played out in quite that way. Pardon me. Lots of tension, obviously, but never that sense of what if they had been more had a real alliance.
I mean, it
Yeah.
would have been the smart thing to do when you think about it. Like, he killed his dad, so you kind of want to keep that kid close to you in case he finds out, you know?
Right. Yeah. I mean, it has those feelings of sort of mob movie familiarity,
Yes,
and
in the best
which I
way.
right, yeah, in a way of the things I would have enjoyed, in terms of Scorsese or Godfather or anything like that, or just my own readings um in that direction. So it does have that sense of, all right, how do you follow this more logically? Do you just the father's been killed? Do you kill the kid? Do you wipe out all the problems, or do you see the potential for it and then start to bring it in? Then you need to bring it in as a manipulation. You keeping this kid and his abilities as a toy or a tool, while you're pretending to show him affection, or do you actually develop affection, in that way? And I think that's ultimately where I skewed more, toward it feeling like there was a real relationship there, that had developed. And I think that's comes out of, um, as much as Fisk is a vile character, and he is, the best villains in your head become something more. You start to adopt their worldview, and you start to play out. All right, why did they do this? Some are easier than others. I think Fisk has more layers, below the blubber, and everything else. Some characters are just totally reprehensible, and there is no nuance. You just find ways to play them out differently.
Is it a lot more fun or freeing to do a what if? Because it's like, if you want to kill Daredevil, kill Daredevil. If you want Kingpin dead, Punisher to be competent in his job and kill the Kingpin. It's all
Yeah, in a way it is, Phil. Although I think that's and we've talked about this a lot. Anytime you, I think, really invest yourself in a story, the story kind of takes on its own initiative if it's really got something going on there, and it's less about. I mean, certain people enter into it, and certainly I've entered into certain things where it's like, I'm going to do this, when you just sort of like aim for that target and you kind of hit it. The running joke with What If, and I think I've talked about this before, among creators certainly, was always it's always going to end in one of two ways. Everything's goes back to exactly the way it was before, right? The status quo is reestablished. Daredevil is the hero of the city or whatever, or literally the entire Marvel universe explodes, right? It's the early butterfly effect of like, well, Ben Grimm turned left and not right on Yancey Street, and therefore the entire universe explodes. It's and, he catches the eye of Galactus earlier, and and comes in, and everything is destroyed. So it's interesting. I don't know if I exactly had that in mind as I did this, probably to some extent, but this doesn't end in either one of those ways, as far as I know. It kind of ends on a little bit more of an open, considerate note, and sort of propositions. What is the future here, of things? It actually, and I'm not trying to draw any analogy to it, but except maybe like in terms of intent, but the final shot or scene, I think, of the newer Luke Cage show, the TV show, which probably at this point is not going to go anywhere else. But there's that sense at the end. Did you guys watch that? I don't know if you liked it, but which I liked a lot. And but that last shot of him, like he's going to be the king, right? He's now he's the king. He's the I think they telegraphed it with a Biggie poster by but even so, it's okay. Now he's got to play this out, and there's much the same here. Daredevil's now the king. So what does he do? How does he
Richard.
Yeah.
Always a bridesmaid, never.
Richard's poem.
Love
it should have been titled, what if Daredevil pwned Richard? That would be
that's no not much of a story.
That's not much of a story. That's like that's 3 panels, right? It's that's a series of like get gag comic strips, like one after another, like sort of like 3-panel comic strips of like Richard thinks he's got it. Murdock turns the tables on him. The womp panel at the end. That's it.
He is very much the Charlie Brown.
Exactly.
I mean, that's interesting that so in your minds he absolutely takes the throne, because him holding like the mask at the end, was me. I always thought, okay, is he questioning in his mind, do I want to take this throne, or I've lost another father to crime, do I now fight again? Does it go back to
that would be a possibility, right? Yeah, that would be reestablishing the status quo. But I think and it is a little vague, or nebulous, there at the end in terms of, all right, what comes next. But rereading it and just picking up my own cues, as it were, I feel he becomes Fisk, not like he takes on the ownership of the Enterprise. What he does with it exactly and how he manages it.
And whether he manages it well or not, because
exactly,
at the end of it's still Matt. He's still got those machinations in the back of his head.
Yeah, exactly. And maybe this is a bigger machinery to uphold certain things, but he's got much as, again, probably Luke Cage would have thought, all right, now I've got control of all this, I'm going to do more things in that show, but he would have been drawn into negative things as well, right? Power. It's not necessarily the power corrupts.
Power corrupts absolutely. Question
mark. Right, or question mark, or does absolute power reveal? Right, there's another interesting variation on that, where it reveals who somebody really is. More so. So, but I think he would have, taken the whatever honor that the people were sort of showing him in the scene, before what you just described, Phil. And, people are kind of like coming to me and, saying how sorry they are and what can they do for me. And, it's a bit like, the king is dead, long live the king. So there's that sense of, you are the heir apparent, from everything everybody knows. So, maybe he would have, adopted a white Daredevil costume, some black highlights, and I could have gotten shit for that too. We could have another toy. That would have been awesome.
I mean, there's so much I love about this, because, like, okay, first plot point.
Karen, I have to say, I really appreciate what you did for Karen. Like, Karen in the beginning, when you first read it, she's like one of my favorite characters. Her and Foggy, like right at the beginning of Daredevil, right? And then Karen just takes this turn, and it just skews me out. But you did Karen justice in this story, and I was just like, I wish somebody would pick this up and do this for her. Truly.
Her and Electra.
Someone care what happened to Karen.
That's what I was gonna say. That's what I was gonna say. I love it where it's like, there's with a what if, there's you feel like, oh, I have to make it look like, show how everyone's life was worse for not having known the main character. Here, Electra and Karen, no, they're living their best lives without Matt Murdock in their life.
Well, and that's my theory. I don't know if you know that, Matt's penis makes women kind of crazy. He's like Sam Winchester. Your life's just absolutely wrecked afterwards.
That Billy Club doesn't do any good. It's it's funny, but isn't that the way very often with the characters that we love and pay most attention to are really the most ruinous influence on things. It's sort of like I couldn't watch it after a point. It was just misery porn to me, but like The Walking Dead, my son and wife were totally into, and they binged the last series. Like, you don't want to know how they binged it. It's actually shameful in a way, but but we were all laughing afterwards, and it's like, that group of people, the heroes, the Rick Grimes, and all of them, a lot of other people would have been just fine with their little mini societies and their little whatevers, their little enclaves, if it wasn't for this group of shits showing up and basically upending everything and ruining everything, right? It's that, you know, got a little community of 20 cannibals or whatever, and you know they're just fine. Or you got 15 religious nut jobs, but they're pretty okay up back there in the woods. Then these guys come along and they raid them, or they impose their moral values, and suddenly the entire eastern seaboard's on fire, and hordes of zombies are
protagonist is just perspective.
Oh yeah,
exactly. So Murdock's the same way, right? He's like, oh, I'm the hero, but upends everything.
Yeah, because both of them have better lives. Foggy, I mean, yeah, he gets like a shit job, but it's like he, I'm sure he's never been beaten by any supervillains or
exactly, exactly. So it's
and even that, I love that, and then I love Stick giving him the business, and it's just like, oh, it's like, how dare you let the Kingpin use you? I wanted to use you.
It's fun. Those are definitely fun things, when you're doing a story like that, where you've got the chance to touch on those callbacks or call sides or whatever you want to call them, to bring in those little moments, and to some degree they're fan service or creator service, because you have to sort of know the world a little bit more to appreciate the Karen bit. You have to know, well, Karen really went down this road, and appreciate that, or Elektra becomes this, or Foggy's gone through that. But you can still make it work, to get that sense across that, all right, in an alternate world, this guy had a influence that wasn't so great for these characters. So now it becomes freeing. And those are fun things that enrich, at least to me, as much as I can recall doing it, but also just rereading it and picking up on it. It sort of just opens up the qualities of the story, and that opposite, It's a Wonderful Life type of vibe.
Oh yeah, I mean, I know you didn't
have the story a lot.
Oh yeah, I was gonna say, I'm sure you didn't have the page space at the time, but I think except for Black Widow, every other girlfriend he's ever had is dead. It's like, oh no, this one's alive, this one's thriving, this one's good. Yeah, no.
Were you tempted to give him a new suit or anything? Were you tempted to just kind of go just a little bit, just do a little bit extra?
No, I don't think.
It feels so tempting.
I mean, we really didn't get much of a suit at all in this, so
Right.
How'd you rein yourself in with all the potential? Seriously, that's the thing about a what if story. How do you rein yourself in?
Well, you have to. I think well, you don't have to. I mean, there's certainly many what if stories again that just kind of
blow up the earth,
off the hook, blow up the earth. Or
I mean, for Marvel, that's a natural conclusion. Let's all be fair, though.
Sure, of course, because we're going to rebuild it. The next one out. I think again the story. I can't remember a lot of the mechanics or the specifics around it, which I'm a little sad for, in the sense of, because I really like the story. I always like the story. Rereading it, with you guys is always, generally fun. But this would have been one that, even before, you gave me the homework assignment, I would have said, oh, I like that story, which you guys know I don't always do.
So it stands out somewhere in your mind that you definitely.
Yeah, so I liked it, but I don't have, a lot of the, I could tell you to the degree of specificity of where Ralph Macchio and Pat Garrahy and I were sitting, and our looks and expressions when we were, debating the pre-Fall from Grace, post lunch with Tom DeFalco, where he wanted us to change, a bunch of stuff. I could tell you exactly, where everybody was and what everybody was looking like and what Ralph said to me and blah, blah, blah. And, maybe just because that's a more heightened drama, right? That's kind of burned into my head in a way. This, I can't recall a lot of the specifics, but I like it just feels like it flowed really nicely. It feels like one of those stories that I didn't struggle with. I think it just wrote itself. If there's any disappointment with it, and it kind of gets to, did you want to do more? Or did you want to kind of go off the hook or something? It kind of, by ending on that what if moment within the what if story, it almost feels like it's a world that would have been worth returning to.
I agree.
What if Daredevil ruled New York, or then they would have changed that to, what if what if Daredevil rented property in New York? I don't know. They would have come up with some lame alternate cover copy.
Oh no,
You
no,
know,
no, no, no.
you
What
know,
if what if he was Trump or something?
not no, God no, no, God no. I'm just simply thinking if you played out the the king is
logical
here type
conclusion
of
to the
thing.
implication.
Like
Yeah.
what's the next step if he now, people are looking at him as the king, he's got control of Fisk's assets. Where does he go with it? Does he try to leverage the power of the Fisk empire for good? Does he, fall in with the worst influences and ends up skewing more toward being, a Fisk
Did you
like,
mean Reed
character?
Richards?
Yeah. But no, I wasn't thinking so much like, just the businessman, Trumpish aspect.
Legitimate businessman.
Yeah, exactly. This is
Humble spice
a
merchant.
humble spice merchant. I love the line, humble spice merchant. Who did a pretty
Isn't that
good.
one of your lines? I think from one of your issues where it's just like, yeah, because
Oh yeah, I use that a
when
couple
he gets the
times.
TV station and Matt's just
Yeah,
like,
I'm just
yeah, why are you buying the TV station? Did that excuse of just being a humble spice merchant not stop working for a guy who owns a skyscraper?
yeah.
Although, man, spices rule, made people come across the ocean, so you never
Spice ruled the world. It's so true. I mean, that's right.
He's an importer exporter.
East Indian,
He works with Art
company.
Mandalay.
Exactly. And George Santos. But
But no, I asked you about or what if's freeing, but is there also like in the back of your mind, it's like, is this story different enough that, to be a what if, because you don't want it to be too similar to what
Yeah,
the
because the
actual
next one
comics do?
after this is what if Sinister formed the X-Men, and I'm like, same difference, no offense. Like in hindsight, as an adult, it's like,
it's your. I think with the what if stories, at least the way they were structured, and depending on who the editor is, and the responsibility, I think, is on you a little bit more, because while they were scheduled books, they were kind of fill-in things. By that mind, I mean, it's got no real repercussions, and it's on you to kind of do as good a job as possible. But you could probably easily get away with, a little bit more of a half-baked version of things, and do a serviceable job, and sign your invoice or sign your voucher, and nobody's going to blink too much. So I think it's just on you to kind of want to elevate the story, and in doing so, Phil, I think that's where you get to that. All right, what am I doing with this that is different? That is asking and answering that what if question, which could be totally extreme, right? What if Daredevil found the cloak of levitation? What if Daredevil was the sorcerer supreme? I mean, that's where you can go to those crazy places, and maybe you can actually extrapolate out in one of the most, really interesting ways. One of my biggest disappointments, I don't know if we touched on this, maybe we did at some point. And it wasn't originally, propositioned as a what if story? I guess it was. But it wasn't titled what if. Was Mark Nelson and I had pitched, and they approved, and were promoting it, a what if, well, in essence, what if Stephen Strange ran Shield, except in this, did I tell you guys this story? I think I did. And so Shield was a supernatural agency. Like, imagine a Marvel world that was ruled by supernatural, not at the order of what was the crazy thing where New York became a total hellstorm. But he ran. What's that?
Which time?
Which time? I'm sorry. Got to contain it. Inferno. So not like to that level, but sort of supernatural was like a day-to-day sort of thing. Like everybody had a little bit of juice, a little bit of magic kind of going on. Some people had more and it was worse, but Shield had been co-founded by Nick Fury and Stephen Strange. And then Fury got driven out for various reasons, and then in this whole weird supernatural world, Strange had to re-recruit Fury back into it to solve this particular problem. So it was a pretty rocking story. And Mark Nelson, who is probably most famous in comics for having done the original Aliens comics for Dark Horse, but has done many other things as well. I mean, he actually had illustrated half of this thing, right? So there are 24, 25 pages of this thing floating around, including this amazing helicarrier that looks like, you know, a castle, you know, with, you know, instead of Quinjets, you know, patrolling it, like there are dragons, you know, protecting it, and it's just completely off the hook. So that was a deep what if exploration of another world and other weirdness, but wasn't meant to establish a status quo or the universe being destroyed at the end. It was just kind of going down this road of literally what if, you know, what if this was here and this was there, and, you know, what if Dum Dum Dugan was a, you know, was a werewolf, you know, that type of thing. So, you know.
I mean, in coming at it from, you know, if people are looking for work, were what ifs in high demand? Because yeah, it's like they're licensed properties, but you can pretty much do whatever you want with them. You know, like you.
Yeah, I think they were probably an easier in for certain people, not probably people off the street.
Yeah, no.
I don't think there was going to be a lot of maybe, you know, maybe if somebody met an editor at a convention and pitched a really intriguing idea, it would definitely be an easier inroad for you know, for maybe a new talent to kind of, you know, get in on something, or test out a new talent or test out an artist. I think there's probably a lot of that. While I don't think I pitched this straight up for looking for extra work, although I could have, it would certainly have been the sort of book that a creator or writer, you know, whatever, could easily pop their head in the office and say, "Hey, looking for anything extra for what if? I've got an idea," and you know, get a pickup, and that could be an established person, or that could be somebody who was, you know, in the office or kind of well known but not well known. You know, somebody who was trying to make their bones on more things, and it would be a step up from doing, you know, the Thundercats or the, you know, awful licensed cartoon properties. Like, here, I want to play with the Hulk or Daredevil, and I've got an intriguing idea, and oh, okay, that one hasn't been done before. I mean, the thing with the what if, after a certain point, a lot of things would have been done. You know, that would have been the hard thing. You know, somebody starting to spew out an idea, and the editor like, yeah, we did that in issue 52. Yeah, I've got that going on in issue 105. You know, one time I had a good friend who was good friends with the showrunners at Star Trek: The Next Generation, and so you know, we got to go on the set, we got to tour the thing, and it was a nice insider thing. So they invited us into the offices, and we talked to the Ron Moore, who was the, you know, one of the main guys. And there was a famous thing with Star Trek: The Next Generation where I think it was Wednesdays, maybe once a month, maybe once a week, but they had basically open pitch days. So you didn't need to be in the business. You didn't need to be, you know, have a credit or whatever. They would let people pitch, right, to try to get new talent in. But they were also a bit vicious about it because, you know, people would come in and they would start to say, yeah, Picard, you know, does this. And they had a giant chart behind them, which, you know, like basically had all the characters across one axis and, like, you know, 100 situations down the other axes, you know, so with these crossover things in the grid. So some poor schmuck would come in and start saying, Data finds and they would just point to the place on the grid. We're like, yeah, done. So before the person got 3 words into the pitch, they were like, yep, done. Thank you. So, you know, it becomes harder, you know, the more things
that
happen.
show has like 7 seasons.
Yeah, exactly.
I thought people just sent in submissions, so you could actually like walk into like the writer's room and be like, okay, here's my pitch.
On that particular show, in that particular whatever
show.
the day of the week or the day of the month that they allowed for that. You know, obviously you had to probably know somebody, you know, they weren't just having a sign at the Paramount gate, you know, come on in, you know. But if you sort of knew somebody and you didn't necessarily have a WGA credit or an established credit, you know, or were already in the writer's room, which obviously would have gotten mostly self or first preference. You know, you could go in and you could pitch. I mean, we weren't pitching anything. We were just there taking a tour of the set and such.
Is there a character that you like would have liked to do a what if for?
A character that I would have liked to have done, you know, it's one of those like things in retrospect. I should have pitched a lot more. I think there would have been a lot of fun to do, you know, many different, you know, characters. I never got to do the Hulk. You know, the Hulk would have been like a fun one, an easy way to do, you know, something in What If. And when I say I never got to, it's, you know, maybe if I'd been smart enough or proactive enough, you know, I could have pitched, you know, something, you know, to do the Hulk or you know, leverage my way into a Hulk story with a Daredevil Hulk, you know, type of thing. But you know, he seems like he would have been a lot of fun to work something out in. I don't know the specific story, Lilith, in terms of, oh, I wish we told the story of what if X, you know, versus Y, but just thinking about it as a little bit more of an open platform, you know, it might have been, you know, fun to do that. You know, might have been fun to do a stick story, you know, too. You know, it might have been fun to kind of play out something where, you know, what if Stick had, I don't know, you know, and sort of leverage a little bit of the Daredevil influence I had at the time to play out some other, you know, characters in that way. But I really now, in retrospect, wish I had gone back and pitched a part 2 to this. This just feels like this would have really been a fun,
you know, a fun thing. The Earth labels on in like retrospect, right?
The what? Which labels?
Like the Earth label, like this is Earth 737 or whatever it was.
Oh yeah. I guess, you know, right. You know, coming back in, it's like it's. I was prescribed to that. What was the line from that famous Alan Moore Superman story? You know, I think he wrote like the last 2 issues of like Action Comics and Superman before Byrne took over, and he's like, yeah, you know, they were all imaginary stories. You know?
I don't know. Oh, okay, I was just gonna say. Okay, first, you know the story for what if he would have pitched next? What if Carnage had never existed?
I would probably done like, you know, what if Carnage had opened a taco joint, you know, and you
know. But yeah, no, I was surprised with these. It's like you didn't go for like one of your stories. It's like, you know, what if Fall the Kingpin had gone much differently? What if Fall from Grace had gone much different? You know, what if Matt at the end of Fall from Grace would have been like, I'm not faking my death. Screw you guys. You know Matt Murdock? I don't care. Come get me.
Yeah. I think those would have been.
Or you're like, or you just like, I've been there, done that. You know.
Yeah, I think that's kind of it. I mean, you know, clearly my skill set, you know, was, you know, both at times thinking I'm full of myself, or other times, you know, thinking, I don't know what I'm doing, you know. So, but I think those would have felt close to the bone a little bit. Like and I was either still in the midst of playing out those choices, you know, in one way or another, and not feeling that if, you know, there was much of a difference. If he hadn't taken the Kingpin down, what would have happened? It would have just continued to be the bad detente of I'm going to take you down. No, you won't. You know, back and forth. You know, if he decided to be Matt Murdock at the end of Fall from Grace, which in retrospect maybe he should have, you know, said F you and everybody. You know, where would I like that kind of choice? You know, where would that have gone? You know, whereas if Hellspawn had won and taken over Matt Murdock's identity, right? That would have been like a big, change, or something. But that, to one extent or another, possibly.
What if Hellspawn took over Matt Murdock's life and no one noticed?
Yeah, exactly. Man, you're like, you're freaking devil. You're ruining everything you touch. Yes, okay, so you're Matt Murdock. But yeah, it didn't. Nothing like that felt like it occurred to me. This felt like something that hadn't been played out in exactly that way before, even in retrospect. Reading it in that regard. So, I'm kind of happy with the choice that was, that was made.
Interesting interpersonal relationship to to dig into. Honestly, it really was.
Yeah, because I mean they and I think I played with it some. From what I've read of Zdarsky's stuff, who's probably the writer I've read the most of in the post era, the newer stuff, he's done. He's got a great, I think, lock on the dynamic of those characters. He plays out that sometimes he skews one way, or the other. Anyone would do that, of course, but it plays into that, powerful characters actually having a lot of parallels and alignment. That's what makes the friction, interesting. And then it's the choices of how they apply that powerful, that power of themselves that then sort of define, what do they do? Matt Murdock kills somebody. He feels he's tortured to confess to it. The Kingpin kills somebody. It's like, he's not so tortured and makes a phone call to have the body hidden. It's all right. That's the
business as usual.
It's
Oh yeah, I think one of your stories again. Yeah, Kingpin just crushes a guy's head in the middle of a boardroom. It's just like, yeah, okay. Did anyone else have any constructive comments? Yeah,
exactly.
Who didn't want to work on Christmas again?
Screw you, Elon Musk. This is how you really keep a company in line.
Oh. Yeah.
So how do you remember how the artist that worked on this came about, or the cover artist?
No. I think that was tipped just when I say just an assignment, that was an editor's choice, based upon either somebody who was available or more likely, from an editorial point of view, this was good. I think a good experience and a good team. So I think it would have been more selective, like knowing I got some people available or people I like, and then making, kept running down the Rolodex or, contact list for modern day audiences. And just finding that, hey, A is not available, but B is, as opposed to just a random thing or just reaching out to the bullpen saying, and who's free this weekend? I think it's a really good. Okay. I think it's really well illustrated, a really well told story.
If you guys had any contact or
Tom Granberg,
Tom Granberg did a really nice job, and I don't recall a lot of contact, maybe, and I regret that if that's the case, except perhaps, like, hey, great job, because it really is
scheduled, so it's kind of like,
yeah, and sometimes you don't know, when it's going to, you don't know, when things have been scheduled or assigned in that way. It was kind of a revelation for me, relatively recently, when I was talking to some other prior Marvel editors and I don't say this disparagingly because it was just the way it was, but having been brought up in the epic world where we had so much deference, not undue deference, but because so many of the titles were creator owned, there was always a lot of interconnection with the creative teams, and what if we do this, and we're going to be doing this, or we're going to have to change the paper, we're going to have to, like, whatever, there's a lot of constant communication because it was their book. And it was a revelation to me recently talking to some of these these editors who were my peers on the Marvel side, where it's like, no, it's Marvel's book and it's Marvel's decision, so we just change whatever we want or do whatever we want, and take the guys off or take the guys on, and it wasn't said in a Machiavellian way, or a cruel way, or it was just sort of SOP. And so I want to be really careful about, again, saying, I'm not saying that in a disparaging way, but it was a revelation to me to sort of, explain why certain things were done certain ways or certain choices were done certain ways. So in this instance, I turned the story in, and it would have been just the editorial decision and SOP to sort of, okay, we're going to assign it to Tom, and not necessarily tell me, in the sense of, hey, Dan, we're going to pick Tom. Is that cool with you?
It makes a lot of sense though, because I originally started reading more indie comics like Epic and Malibu and things like that, and then made my way over to the big two.
Yep.
And you could just kind of tell in the construction of the story and stuff, there's certain little noticeable things like, oh, why would they change that? That doesn't seem like something the actual writer or artist would have necessarily wanted.
Yeah, possibly. But so I think that this could have been, I may have called in and said, hey, how's that what if story going? Oh, it's finished, and not even that could have been very much the case, right? Where I never would have been informed who was on it, or that it was in the process of being illustrated, or was scheduled for next month, or any of that kind of stuff. So that would just
cohesive that I was just wondering. That's why.
Yeah, no, I think he's a really good artist, and it really felt.
So that means your script was really, really good. So they didn't really need to call you.
Maybe, but I just think it's also a nice, a good talent, and he got the character, he got the vibe, the characters and the body language, feel right. It has that sense of both bigger drama, but also because the scenes are smaller in some cases, balances out so many nice things. Well, I'll take credit for ideas and dialogue and blah blah blah. There's the story works as well as it does because he took the time and care to bring those characters to life in that way. It could easily have gone either horribly illustrated and chop shop stuff, or everything could have felt so big and outrageous that it would have been the wrong way to go. So I really appreciate the look of it and the feel of it on all those levels.
And again, it probably helps it's a Daredevil story. It's not like, there's 500 Kree warships coming in. What do these ships look like?
Yeah, but it's sometimes people just don't know. They don't. And they go in bad weird places. We've talked about it before. The people with the armor, that hold that toy up, Will. Get that who would draw that like it was going into the Third World War battle, right? They would not have any sense of character. It was all like, this kind of thing. And for one reason or another, I was reading some of the post Chichester Daredevils, and which I hadn't really read a lot of, and they had so many situations, or some people did, of Daredevil basically being a boulder into battle, and bullets pinging off the armor, and stuff like that. Like, oh, I'm invincible. I'm going to run into this battle. And to me, that was like, just, man, that's so wrongheaded. Just because that was never the intention of it. It was meant to be, I need another layer of protection, and so I can keep doing what I'm doing. That's just kind of smart. And independently or otherwise, you could see the TV show arrived at some of the same kind of conclusions. But to have this guy who is so skilled at battle and battle avoidance, and has all these hypersenses, allowing a bunch of bullets to hit him, is right. That's asinine, right? Yeah. So that's, Lilith, when you say, oh, it's Daredevil, people, I think, can make really wrong choices even when they know what it is. Or, famously, that one artist who Ralph brought in post Lee, the first page we got back was the guy tearing the door off a taxi cab, because he didn't know the character at all. He just assumed, well, you know, he's a superhero, so he can rip things apart with his bare hands, and
Only when he's frustrated.
yeah, exactly. I guess, yeah. When Karen doesn't return his call, you know.
Exactly.
Oh, but she's dead. That's painful.
Oh, damn.
Sorry.
But yeah, no, I looked up this cover date. I'm like, who was writing Daredevil at this time? And it was Daredevil 340 this month. So your old buddy Alan Smithy.
You know, well, interesting. Now that you say that,
did that have anything to do with decisions on this issue? As compared,
no, because this would have been written in advance.
Okay,
This would have been written in advance, you know. So this probably was still like in a, you know, prior to that, I think, but hard to remember in that particular time frame. I mean, I like the story. I really like how it turned out. So I think that's the most important thing.
So just to clarify, were you saying like, I mean, was that typical like on like a what like a what if or a fill in something like this where it's just like you turn in a script and you don't even know who's gonna like draw it until like the actual product comes out? If they don't need to contact you, was it just like, okay, here's the script, you know, and you won't see it again until someone's already drawn it and colored it?
It could be the case in certain things. If you're working on a longer term book, no, you know, you want to know who it is. On a case like this, that wouldn't have been necessarily unusual, but at this point in time, this still would have been a plot script situation. So writing the plot for Marvel, which would have been, you know, page 1, this happens, page 2 to 5, this happens, you know, and I would tend to, in my head, sort of break things down even in panels. The artist didn't always illustrate it that way, but I sort of had it paced out, you know, for 15, 18 panels, you know, over 3 pages or whatever. So I might say page 2 to, you know, 2 to 5, and then I would just write. Sometimes I'd insert dialogue if a line was in my head, you know, Daredevil says something like this and blah, blah, blah. But then you would still then get the artwork back as pencils to then script it, you know. So now you see it, and if you've had a line in the plot that, you know, still carries over, you carry that over, but you still have to like then go through the rest of it and write the captions and the dialogue. And at that point that you're doing that, depending on the schedule, the editor might have already sent the pages on to be inked, you know, to make up some time. And then in that case, the lettering would have been done in this dinosaur-like age, you know, on vellum and then pasted on top of the inks. The best process, if you had the schedule, was to do the script, have the pencils then sent to the letterer. The letterer would letter on the board, like on the penciled board, and then you'd have everything in one place. And then that page would then be sent to the inker, and then the inker would, you know, embellish and bring the things to life from his or her point of view.
Wow. And again, so it's like if you didn't know beforehand that Tom was going to be drawing this, I mean, it turned out great, but it's like, so did you, in your notes and everything, did you go into more detail? Because like on the monthly book, you're like, okay, Lee knows my style. I don't have to go into as much detail. Scott knows how, you know, what's going on. I don't have to go into as much detail.
You know, I think I didn't moderate my writing style too much, even once I was comfortable with somebody. I think I generally maintained the same level of detail. Probably as I got more familiar with a Scott or a Lee, I knew more what was going to happen. Yeah. You know, I knew, and I had the confidence that this was going to be the case, but I didn't necessarily turn the dial down on the level of detail or the why is this or how is this supposed to look, or, you know, samples of dialogue. I would keep that pretty consistent just because it worked for me too. It made the story come to life for me.
But not even turn down on them. Just if you don't know who's drawing or you're working with someone new, do you turn up the level of detail?
Oh, I see where you're going. Yeah. No, I think not necessarily, because again, my things were, I felt pretty detailed, maybe too detailed. You know, I'd sort of say, all right, this is here and this is why this is. It wasn't Alan Moore level detailed, certainly, but it was, you know, a good balance of, you know, where we are, where's the camera, how does something look, if I had a description of a costume or a new character or a piece of technology or something like that, I tried to kind of make it enough for myself and go from there.
Oh yeah. Well, again, you were an editor. You had the experience, and again, nobody ever fought for 15 pages. So.
No, I never did that. I just, that would have been bad.
It's not a Carnage book, Phil.
No, I think he's like also referring to that like infamous example of like, page 7 to 22, they fight, good luck. I'm vouchering, have fun with it. And people did that. So no, I couldn't do that.
Yeah, if you ever want to change it up, 1 month we could just be like, "Why I Hate Carnage," episode 5.
I don't think I ever invested myself enough into Carnage to actually be able to articulate an answer. It just felt like, man,
Maximum Carnage is enough. Even if you read one issue, that's enough.
There you go. There you go.
Like 18. Yeah, again, he was invented in the 90s to be a slaughter machine, and
yeah, that's exactly it. That's exactly it. And in that, he's fabulously successful, right? It's few characters have achieved.
There's only one man in a red suit around here.
Equity with their name, so quickly, right?
Again, right place, right time, I guess.
Yeah, totally.
All right, Lilith, any other questions for this man?
Nope, not at all. We'll let him get back to his lovely Saturday.
All right, thank you. My lovely Saturday. I actually have a
business brainstorming meeting. Cons or appearances coming up?
No, not yet.
I'd love to get this signed.
I'd love to sign it. I'm actually trying to line some things up, so we'll see if they come together. Somebody said there might be 3 things, but when I re-inquired about it and sort of said, so who do I need to get in touch with? I've gotten radio silence so far, but if it comes up, that would be cool, but nothing so far. So stick with
I've tried before. We have to get this man to Steel City Con Lilith in April, because Lilith is gonna come up here finally in
Even
April.
Even if I have to drive, crying
oh my god,
no.
all three of us could be together.
Well, who do I need to contact? Give me a name separately and see if you can find out somebody to, I can remind them who I am and see if they'll invite me. I don't like to just go to the general website. Having a name is always a nice behind the scenes
always
thing.
Better in that situation for sure.
The 3 of us could go out to lunch. We could be like, "You're still alive."
Exactly. Exactly. What if?
But we'll shut down a diner.
I love diners. Diners are the best. All right. So storymaze.substack.com and what's my homework for next time out? What do you got?
We're gonna do Daredevil 314 and 315.
Oh, okay.
With
Very
Shock.
nice.
Is it Shock?
That's
yeah.
Nice. Somebody brought that up recently. That's weird. That's good synergy. I will. I think I like those stories, but I think it's another example of like, okay, you introduced all this stuff and you didn't do anything with it. But anyway, we'll talk all about that, about my issues and the issues when we return in February.
Yes.
Okay.
Any updates on your new project or?
No, but I'm having a discussion about that later today or tomorrow. The only tease I can give you on that is I actually contacted a letterer of known value and got a decent commitment from that person to kind of start to say it's going to be real. And I talked to a pretty extraordinary, talented guy about a logo design. And if I get that worked out, that would be a real win to get that person on board. So it's I'm trying to make it more real, and I'm trying to accept the fact I'm going to have to do more on it than I wanted to make it real. But that's fine. That was one of my New Year's resolutions, to accept the fact and own it, as opposed to thinking it's going to be a total dual thing, which I think will help advance it more. So hopefully more to come.
Yeah, I try to follow. I mean, I do follow you on social media, so I try to see all the updates. But if there's any update, let me know. We'll blast out.
Yeah, we'll do. We'll do.
Hype for totally this before it even comes out.
Thank you.
But yeah, kids, follow them on social media. Yeah, get the newsletter. Sign up.
And when check back here in a month. All right.
All right.
Thank you, guys. Take
Thank
it
you,
easy.
sir.
Be good.
Pleasure
Good seeing you
as
both. All right. Happy. All right. How do I get out of here? Leave studio. Goodbye.
It's been such a long time.
The holidays will do it to you. You get fuzzy brain.